face your fears. You ride them.
I first wanted to hear a little bit about how the two of you came together for this one, because obviously we know both of your work separately, but this was a first-time collaboration, was it?
When I got on board with Twisters, of course, I have to find someone to edit the movie. I had worked with Harry Yoon on Minari, and Harry had signed on to another project, and I asked him, well, can you give me any people who you recommend? And he sent me a couple of people, but he said, people really love Terilyn Shropshire. And I was looking at her. I love The Woman King. I was a huge fan of The Woman King. And also, Love and Basketball is just a phenomenal movie. Anyway, I had to go. I signed up to do some mentorship program here at the Academy. Gold, yeah. And we got paired up together in an icebreaker, and I had just, heard your name as well, and then we're suddenly answering, like, what's your favorite thing you like to eat, and, whatever. And then we just started talking that night, and I think I mentioned to you, hey, I'm making this film called Twisters.
Yeah, you mentioned it, all right. Yeah. I mean, it was very funny because you were just kind of, you asked me what I was doing and what I'd been doing, and I said, oh, what are you doing? And you said, oh, yeah, I'm in pre-production. And I said, oh, yeah, what are you doing? And you said, Twister. And I remember the pause I took. I said, Twister? You mean like Twister? And you laughed and you said, yes, yeah. But you said it's not a sequel. It's a standalone.
Right,
you said it's a revisit. So yeah.
Well, tell me a bit about number one, because that is kind of the, I spoke with you a little bit earlier, Isaac, and you mentioned that sequence itself is just about 14 minutes long, and you've got 14 minutes to introduce us to this world, to Kate and her original team, and then also to absolutely terrify us with what they end up coming up against with this EF5 tornado. How did you all kind of pace that out and find a way to kind of hit all of those different dynamic beats in just a 14-minute sequence?
Yeah, it was tricky. And on top of that, we have to kind of set up the story, what this experiment that Kate is doing is, and explain the science of it in a very simple yet accurate way. All of that was really difficult to figure out how do we put the plot in. And then set up Kate and Javi as people we were going to be with for the entire film. My goal with that opening was to make it feel as though we're going to spend the entire movie with all of those characters. And I wondered, if that is going to be the case, then how do we tell the story to make sure to feel like I'm introducing them, giving them all their moments, and humanizing them so we instantly know who they are, as though I'm telling the audience, lock in, these are our guys, and we're gonna go on a journey with them, and this is their goal. But I feel like once we started to edit and talk about that scene, we also saw things that we could do. And Terry, you had that wonderful idea of doing Kate being filmed with the video camera by Jeb in the beginning, and that's something that made it into the film and really helped set up the story in a great way. So there was constantly a dialogue between us as I was filming of things that we really need to set up the story.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing when you have first unit, second unit, C unit going, and often, sometimes second unit is going ahead of first unit, sometimes first unit's going. It's really, really helpful to be able to kind of be a little bit of a conduit between everybody in terms of once Isaac goes out. And really a lot of my time during production is just preparing either Isaac or second unit or C unit for what they need to continue to get.
The ensemble is, of course, the actors. You, of course, it's anchored by Daisy and Glenn and Anthony, but, everybody in this movie has those kinds of hero moments. How did you find that right chemistry for this ensemble and also find ways and times to let them shine?
I felt like I really was fortunate and lucked out in many ways to get this group of actors. And I was so astounded by so many of them who really, they have led their own movies, they've been number ones on their own films, and they agreed to do this and to be part of this big ensemble. So once we got to Oklahoma, what I found was that there's a reason they're adored and admired. I mean, once they're all together, they're just a good group of people. And we hung out a lot. They hung out a whole lot. They went line dancing together. There was all sorts of stuff they were doing because they're on location. I think that helped a lot too, the fact that they're away from LA where they might go to their own homes and stuff like that. We were all kind of in the same square radius as well, hanging out.
And one of the things you all did as well was early on, there was a rescreening of Twister as well, yes?
Yes, at Harkins Theater in Bricktown. It was Daisy's idea, I think. Daisy said, hey, can we watch Twister in the theater? And so we all put it together and got together one afternoon and watched it. And
Yeah,
it was fun.
It's like 2 days before you were starting to shoot.
Yeah.
It was fun.
It was. I remember it being a vocal event where
Yeah,
we were all
we had a
laughing
great
really
time.
loud. And,
No.
Yeah. Yeah, it
People
was good.
quoting, kind of like, I mean, we didn't do anything Rocky Horror like, but we were like kind of throwing out, lines in the movie.
Yeah.
Well, it feels like that's also kind of been the experience of this movie thus far, too. People have started to really get into it. I can mention at the premiere screening, there was a round of applause for Tyler's white T-shirt. Were you expecting this movie to be that kind of film?
So I was studying Kurosawa. I was studying like all these great filmmakers who use rain in a very expressive and poetic way. And I thought this moment really needs this rain for this poetic feeling. And then Eunice was like, this is the costume. I'm like, okay, I'm just generally cool about what she's presenting. And we're rolling and rain's going, and then he walks out in the white T-shirt and is progressively getting wetter, and I realize what I had just done. And then I remember in that moment turning to Ashley J. Sandberg, our executive producer, and she smiled, and I said, "You're welcome." And Terry, I asked her to please trim that shot at one point.
Yes, you did.
Yes.
And there was literally, not for me, but I think that there was like, within the cutting room space, there was revolt.
There was revolt.
There was revolt. So, but when a director asks you to do something, you say, well, we should absolutely do this. We should try this and see how it works.
But then you mentioned the word mutiny was the word that you brought up.
I just wanted to let you know that there were certain people within the cutting room that had feelings about you wanting to trim that scene.
And do you remember when I said who, what you said? You said the ladies.
I guess I did.
When you're shooting on film, why are you going to waste all of those precious frames?
Exactly. It shouldn't go to the cutting room floor. That'd be tragic. Yeah.
We talked about the ensemble cast, but there's also kind of another element to this ensemble, and it is these tornadoes. Each of these tornadoes has its own personality, has its own place in the script. How did you kind of develop each of these and also the visuals for each of them to kind of be so distinct?
Yeah, I was very fortunate to be working with Ben Snow as our VFX supervisor. He worked on the original Twister, and he was excited to kind of show us what could be done now. We started off very early in prep, coming up with looks for each of the tornadoes, and we had a shared folder in which it was loaded with YouTube clips of actual tornadoes where we went scene by scene what things would look like. So on that side, what Ben was doing in creating these things that are also the stars of the movie, that was just a wonderful process. And he was developing those looks for us as well while we were even in production. At one point, I was able to see some of the stuff that he was doing, so I would know it would help me as a director. And then on the sound side, I felt like that was really the icing on the cake, because Al Nelson, Bjorn Schroeder, the guys at Skywalker, they gave these tornadoes not just a technical realism, they gave them an artistic expression. Like the things that Al was doing, he was adding in the sounds of like wolves howling. Like that was something he wanted to do to make sure that the tornado would feel alive and have its own individual voice. So he was concerned with making sure each tornado was distinct in some way, and it was all based on his own memory as a child of surviving a tornado in Florida, which was, I just love that he was working off of memory and something very personal. When I was prepping this film, it really occurred to me this is a monster movie, and I was looking at Jaws quite a lot while I was prepping for this as well. And Jaws, it comes from a long line in tradition of these amazing Universal monster films, and I felt like it's great that Twisters, it can be part of that legacy in some way. Because these tornadoes are really like monsters, and that's the way that we can actually present them as well, narratively. So I wanted to pay a bit of an homage to that, and that's where Frankenstein came from. So even the birth of that last tornado, it's supposed to feel like Frankenstein coming alive as well, and it's really just playing in that space of loving cinema and trying to give people a good time.
Thank you for giving us a good time, and thank you all for sharing your time with us. Congratulations to you, Isaac and Terry. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.